Hey there guys, this is a video just to discuss some current events to add context. I'm working on the predictions for Australia, and I'm also working on the predictions based on the Nixon shock chart for any economic events that are going to happen. But I just felt the need to discuss some of these items with you, and I thought, we could have a little bit of a chat, which would be quite enjoyable. I'm really racing to get all my horoscopes books finished at the moment, so it means there's a bit of time pressure. So as you know, we've got the moronic variant at the moment. Now, on when it all broke, this was the headline in the Daily Mail. And now, unfortunately, there was a picture that went along with this, but the picture was only in the main montage. It wasn't actually with the article. So the original pictures disappeared, so I couldn't show it to you. But I wanted to because it was a piece of fake news. But let me just say there, it said there, the scramble begins. Well, I don't think there's any scramble, actually, amongst the public. The scramble is within the media and everyone to make a big hoo-ha about this new variant, Scarient. So it says for third dose appointments. Now, do you notice it's no longer being called a booster? Suddenly it's a third dose because we know that there's going to be 4, 5, 6, 7, and we already hear about them ordering mammoth amounts of these things, which I'm going to come to as well, and prompting the government to aim to start jabbing 500,000 people, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so there's a huge enthusiasm. Now, I don't want to go into all the details. Now, the picture that went with this was a very, very long queue. I'd say there were as many as 250 people in a queue, and they were claiming that this picture was a queue of people who'd suddenly all run along to get the third one, the third needle, because they'd heard of Omicron and they were very, very worried, and they were responding to the government urging them to go and get it. And I took a close look at this picture. And the particular day in the UK that was taken, it was absolutely bitterly cold. And I was looking at these people and thinking, lots of women with summer jackets, lots of people with their heads uncovered. Sure, the picture was taken on a rainy, grim day, so there were few people with umbrellas and an overcoat. And I thought, wait a minute, it was sunny today. It was quite dry and it was freezing cold. I don't think any of those people are dressed appropriately for this weather. I mean, they are either totally insane. I don't think you would go anticipating a long queue wearing what they were wearing, or you very soon get sick. Never mind get the you get a cold. So I think there was a bit of fake news. I think that queue was taken out of archive. If you had to know, they're probably queuing for a, I don't know, Ollie Murs concert, goodness knows what. But there was another bit of fake news, and I had wanted you to show that, but they've taken it down, as I say. Just to say about these, talking about all these doses and all that. Now, we know that they've had enough doses to jab, double jab. Most Britons, don't know if Americans have held out a little bit. So, but it's a vast amount of people have been jabbed in America, all across the EU, all across South America, in Australia, etc., etc. Now, where was the extra capacity? Because they haven't slowed down with all the other. They're still giving the children their full schedule. They're still giving everyone the flu shot. All the others are still continuing, and yet there was all this extra capacity to create billions of these. Where are the factories? Where are they being warehoused? When were they doing creating the assembly lines, getting the staff, increasing the size of the laboratories to make all of these? There's a lot going on here. Now, a friend of mine did say they built one of these, the one that begins with a P, built a massive refrigerated warehouse in the southeast of England. So, and he said, well, as we found out later, these had to be stored at a very low temperature. So there was obviously a bit of foresight involved in building that. But I do think, that's more evidence for any of you guys who are having arguments and people say, well, this is conspiracy nonsense. It couldn't have been planned. They wouldn't coordinate like this. Well, they must have, because they needed all that extra capacity. And I'm sure people who are quantity surveyors or who do management accounting would tell you these things don't just appear overnight. There's a lot involved. Can you imagine all the machinery, the equipment, hiring extra people to do all this, to assemble the products? And what's happening to when you dispose of all these things, right? They have to be disposed of. Okay, there's no real conspiracy involved in there, but, they have to be disposed of. So it's just another thing to say to you, come on. There was foresight here, because these factories, warehouses, assembly lines, they had to be all ready to go. Now, the next problem is not a problem, but a discussion point. We continually hear about, democracy and our wonderful democracy. And there is no democracy without a functioning media. You can only have a democracy if you have an informed public. If people are only exposed to a tiny subset of the information, which is very skewed, then how can they possibly go to the ballot box and make informed choices? So, there's that saying that democracy is two wolves and a sheep sitting around a campfire voting on dinner, but a republic is where the sheep's got a gun. And I think, yeah, that's the whole problem with democracy. Now, what a lot of people said about the Soviet Union is there was actually too much democracy. Because, communism, it's all about consensus, community. Key thing to communism. If you hear the words consensus or community, it's a communist talking generally, so watch out. But that's why there's, at the heart of communism is often democracy, because in communism, they control the media. There's a lot of censorship, and therefore they can go to the ballot box with confidence every time, knowing that people will vote the way they want them to vote because they control the media. So once you've not got a function media, democracy falls apart, because you can guarantee people will vote in whichever way they've been brainwashed. Because like someone said, I think it was Churchill said, there's no such thing as public opinion, there's only published opinion. People can only form opinions on what information they're given, and if they've outsourced their information gathering to the media, well, there you go. Okay, I did see an extremely worrying clip of German police with full, like, AK-47s, automatic rifles. I mean, seriously, going into a cafe to check COVID passports. It's a total show of force. It's meant to be intimidating. It's meant to bully people. It's meant to totally put the fear of God into people. You do not need guns the size of that to go and check COVID passports in a cafe. It's menacing people. It's a sign that we are in a tyranny. Then I also noticed in Germany, in certain supermarkets, they had fences, kind of these temporary fences they often use at music venues, just to separate people who've had the thing and people who haven't had the thing. And it just made me think, because, my mum often says that we are in danger of almost overestimating these people. We hear all their talk of that this is nanotechnology, and they've got this hydrogel, and they've got all these wonderful systems and the satellites, and we all kind of boggled by this technology. But then you look at things like these fences. That's an incredibly low-tech way of dealing with this, right? I mean, they've had fences since Moses' day. So on one hand, they're telling us they're super duper extremely advanced, and this technology can track and trace and mess our genes and transform us into transhumans and merge us with aliens, blah, 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 blah. Oh, but then they're cordoning people off with a fence. So we've got like Moses' day technology with some space age alien technology. Or, do they really have this technology, or are they gaslighting us? Because that's a bit prehistoric. Then the other issue is, you get so many people who are, on the skeptical side of the so-called conspiracy theorist side of the argument, and they'll say, they talk in the most hyperbolic terms about the dangers of this. I mean, really extreme talk. And then they'll say, oh, but I still believe in vaccines. I'm pro-vaccine. I'm really pro-vaccine. Yeah, you've got to scratch your head there, because the other ones are made by the same people. This really ultra scary one that you're telling us about is made of. I don't want to talk about it because it's YouTube here, but here's an example. Say, for example, your kid's at a school and Mr. Brown, who's the PE teacher, is sexually abusing kids. And you tell the school, look, I'm really opposed to my kids going to Mr. Brown's PE class because I believe that he is a dangerous person and is abusing my kids. But on the other hand, he's a terrific English teacher, so I have no objection to my kids being taught English by him. He wouldn't do that, because it's the same person, right? And on one hand, you have a really extreme idea of what this person's doing, but in other situations, you do trust your children with him. So there's this kind of thing going on where people need to stand back and ask themselves, oh, right, yeah, basically, can we be trusting any treatments? Because if they're prepared to do this with this one, well, it's kind of been going on all along. I know a lot of people keep saying that with the whole shutdown, particularly here in the UK and the NHS, people are not getting their cancer, not only their treatments, but they're not getting their diagnoses, and they're not getting their treatments. The cynic in me says that may save lives. Because if the diagnostics for other diseases are as bad as we're told the PCR is, how many false positives are there? Are people told they've got cancer when they don't, and maybe you're getting treatment which they don't need? Because isn't that very similar to what we're hearing about the whole AIDS thing and Dr. FraudFragi? that a lot of people were diagnosed with AZT, and in many cases it was the treatment that killed them. Like even Freddie Mercury, right? I've often been thinking, did he need to die? Or was he just prescribed treatment that was so aggressive and toxic that maybe that killed him rather than the AIDS? Because Magic Johnson didn't go down that route. Guys, do a little anagram, Freddie Mercury, and you'll get the word murdered from his name. Just rearrange the letters. Yeah. Okay. So so there's a guy called Nick Ferrari on a radio show here, and before you rather get sidetracked by the name, there's nothing racy about this guy. He could rather be called, I don't know, Nick Clapped Out Citron, or Nick Lauder. Yeah. So he was being really rude to a very sensible caller who called in. And of course, Ferrari got totally discombobulated when the caller started talking about Dr. Robert Malone, because as he knows, this is now going to introduce a really solid point. So he said, oh, I can tell you're a person who gets your information from Google rather than from government sources and government agencies. Yes, exactly. He's a thinking person. What person gets all the information from government agencies or government sources? I mean, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, you know, really, when did anything go wrong where you totally believed everything government said? I mean, that nice guy, Mr. Hitler, he wouldn't tell us anything wrong, would he? He wouldn't lead us up the garden path or encourage us to do anything not particularly savoury. What about Mr. Kim Jong-il? He's in the government. Should we believe him? Mr. Stalin, Mr. Pol Pot? I mean, since when does listening to government only provide you with any information that you need? WMD, the sexed up dossier. It's just insane. And he says, you do your research on Google. Yeah, right, Google, who censor everything. I don't think that's where he was doing his research. This guy's out of touch. But of course, if you ring up a radio station, they control the board. They can dial your volume down, dial their volume up. They can cut you off. And they've already got their pre-prepared talking points that are used to make a fool of you, to distract you, and to stop you from making your point. So it's very difficult for anyone calling in to overpower them, because they just dial your voice down. You've got like a slow little mouse-like volume, and they've got this booming volume, and they can just cut you off. So I did see a disgusting and disturbing video. Gemma O'Doherty has it on her website. It's of an Irish, one of these morning housewifey, nothing wrong with being a housewife, but Karen-y TV shows. And they've got a woman who is advocating repurposing an old sock so that the children can have a play mask to put on their doll. And I thought, oh my God, that is crazy. Then they were using words like, you want to help the children familiarize themselves with the mask and demystify the mask, all this kind of really psychological language. No, you are brainwashing the child to accept a reality that is sick, demented, disturbing, and highly destructive, especially for a young mind. And then you've got the presenter sitting there. There's not a brainwave moving across their grey matter. They're just staring, yeah, great, oh nice. They don't think. There's no balance. There's no other psychologist or a person there to say, hang on a second. We don't want to be indoctrinating children in this way and making them accept that a mask on a child's face is a normal thing. It was just really unbelievably disturbing, and another case of a total lack of balance, just pushing same agenda all the time. Then they got one of those ear cleaning sticks, and they said, oh, you can give your children these, and they can poke it up the doll's nose to get them into that as well, because we must habituate children to having testing all the time, because of course where that leads. I was looking with despair at a lot of the posts of my friends in South Africa about this moronic variant, and they're really proud that it was a South African doctor that discovered it. But you're missing the point. It's just all feeding into the agenda. It's keeping this whole juggernaut of testing, tracing, lockdowns going. That's what it's doing. It's a never-ending cycle, and if we don't say stop, it's never going to stop. Anyway, I think I've covered a lot of these goodies, and yeah, so I just wanted to touch on those issues, those sort of things that wound me up this week, and I just thought that I'd share them with you and give you all a bit of food for thought. My hair looks the most repulsive colour. It's this dreadful light. It really isn't this colour, I assure you. I would not dye my hair like mustard. Looks like it's soaked in some sort of peculiar mustard or peri peri sauce or something. Yeah, it looks like I bought my hair from Nando's. But that's just, I think, I'll worry about beauty when this whole thing is over. At the moment, there are more important things to worry about than looking really cute on YouTube, on the others. By the way, I'll also be placing this on Rumble, BitChute. Please check my other channels because I do put a lot of things on BitChute that aren't, on here for obvious reasons, on Taliban Tube. I always put them on my Facebook. I don't often put them on my Twitter, but I want to start tweeting them, and I want to do more on Gab and also Getter. But anyway, thanks guys. Look forward to doing my Australian one. Nice to chat with you. Hope you're all well and keeping warm if you're up here. And God bless all you guys who are really up against it, Australia particularly.